Greetings and welcome to my channel. This is Sorcerer Tal. You can also find me online at thesorcerersguild.com as well as on Facebook at the Sorcerers Guild. Today on Magical Theory and Unorthodox Weirdery, we are going to be talking about breaking the fourth wall for fun and profit. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean exactly what you think I mean. Just like in a Deadpool movie, when the actor turns towards the camera and addresses the audience directly. Or in Rick and Morty, you will sometimes see this, where they reference the fact that they are in a show. Well, reality itself is in many ways a show. I talked before about how we create magic by observing or perceiving the unobserved potential. And that is part of what's going on here, yeah? At the beginning, at the very moment of creation, which is not happening inside of time, by the way. I feel like I didn't mention that before when I talked about the holy noise or the Big Bang and how we perceive outwards from there. And then those things that were unobserved are some things that we can gather later. Okay, that is the moment we are talking about here, but this isn't a moment inside of time. That is happening in perpetuity. I'm still not sure if I pronounced that word correctly. It's eternal, yeah? The sound is a constant hum, and within that perception is where the observing happens, and we have the unobserved observer at the very center. And what is the unobserved observer? Well, this is the closest one could come to the idea of God. But this unobserved observer is not conscious, yeah? It's a dreamer. In the very center, the thing that observed that there was nothing, which created the first mind blown, the holy noise, the thing that observed that is dreaming. And not a lucid dream. Yeah, there's a difference. We have these lucid dreams where we are aware that we are dreaming and we are interacting with the dream. It is not that side of observation. It is like a lens. It's like in these experiments that I already mentioned, I believe, about how electrons and the smallest components of the material plane will react differently when observed. Even a camera lens counts. And that is how minute the unobserved observer is. It is a dream. They are having a dream in which they have no control. And that is why bad things happen to good people outside of karma and anything like that, is because it's simply being observed. And perhaps even maybe, well, that's the more interesting thing. So as this thing observes, it is passive. But if we pay attention to how the unobserved observer behaves, this is how we can break the fourth wall for profit, acknowledging that we are in a show, and then taking that moment, that realization, and applying that to the law of aesthetics. This is where that law originates from, is the idea that we are essentially in a movie in which we are all our own lead character, right? And so understanding the theme, the overlying theme of your movie is the same as understanding your fate. And when we understand the tendencies within our own lives, we can use that to prophesize how things will go. And I've talked about this before with the law of aesthetics and how things tend to flow in a theme. But there's more beyond this unobserved observer. So let's go beyond that. As I just mentioned before, how we are all the lead role in our own movies. Yeah, no one's an NPC in their own movie. We are all the center. Even if it's a tragedy, we are the center, each one of us, of our own portion of the story. I mentioned it before as a litany, but it can also be seen as a movie, a musical, however you view your reality. But as we approach the center, in the very center, we have this unobserved observer. But as we go out from that just a little bit, we have the individual awarenesses that make up the collective and all of these things at the center. I've referred to before as whose face has too many names, whose name has too many faces. And we all get there eventually. That is one thing that have been assured of. There is no escape. We all become part of the audience eventually. We all reach that very center just before the unobserved observer, where the key essence of our existence is to be entertained, is to watch existence unfold in its many different variables and its many different possibilities and potentials as the holy noise echoes out and we listen to the song, watch the movie, hear the sounds and the sights of creation unfold, while we at the same time play our part. And so this is the higher self that we truly want to reach towards, is our part of the audience. And so we can break the fourth wall in this way as well, literally talking to the audience. And this is like self-talk, but we're not talking to ourselves, except for perhaps to that part of ourselves which is watching the show. And they are not the only observer. Yeah? We have the audience of everyone that can reach that point and perceive everything. Like I've said, we all reach that point of becoming part of whose face has too many names, whose name has too many faces, which isn't really a conglomerate so much as when you're on this end, when you are a single individual perceiving it, it comes off as, well, it's a giant crowd all trying to talk to you at once sometimes. And that's why we call it whose face has too many names, whose name has too many faces. That doesn't mean that there's a point where we become like a big blob of faces all morphed together, like in some of your crazier, why can I not remember the name of that anime? You all know the anime I'm thinking of. Someone say it in the comments. ADD will not give me that information right now. Akira? Is that the name of it? The one where they eat all. Anyways, that's not what that's not what I mean by when I say whose face has too many names and whose name has too many faces, and we all become part of that. It is simply that it becomes a multitude when it is communicating back to the individual. And that, again, is part of the audience that we are hoping for. And we want to kind of play to our audience. That's another where the profit with an F can come into this, and the fun as well, which also has that F, I suppose. So this is how you get your 2 Fs out of this, is by playing to the audience. Yeah? Because there is perception creates reality, or observation creates reality, but belief imparts. And our audience, as they watch us, and they begin to expect or hope for things about us. And that's why we want to have a good relationship with the observer, the observers, those watching our show, and hoping that it is a good show and hoping good things for us. So we want to keep within this idea of the story, of keeping our story a certain style. Like, quite frankly, mine's a bit of an absurdist comedy. My life is definitely some kind of absurdist comedy, and I'm okay with that. I enjoy that for my life, but I allow that to happen. I play into that because that is what my audience wants. That is the theme of my life. I allow my life to go in that way, and I'm part of that audience. So this is the theme and plot that I desire for my life, and I allow it to unfold between me and the observers. And this is also where that idea of living your life as an art form comes into play. And what will your art form be? Okay, so now let's get off of my UPG, unverified personal gnosis, on this, and let's take this idea down a little more. We have this idea. This isn't just my idea. Other cultures talk about this as the mystery of life, and like, well, the litany, the mythos. A lot of your old gods. That's especially a lot of what we believe about the Vikings. You know, I can't do that, or Odin would think me a fool. That Odin is always watching. Odin wants to see a good story. Even the Christian religion, we have this idea that God is the thing watching us all the time to make sure we don't sin. Yeah, and in my own lore, in my own family lore, in the Ojibwe customs, there is this idea of the story of the hunt, or the story of a battle, or anything like that, and that there are spirits associated with that idea. In fact, one of the more common myths, or I feel it's just a superstition because I don't personally stick to this one, is that you shouldn't take a lunch with you if you are out hunting or fishing, because if you eat while you're fishing or hunting, then the spirits of the hunt will feel that, well, you've already eaten, you couldn't be that hungry, so it's not as important in the story that you actually catch a fish if you ate a sandwich on the boat or the canoe, whatever. So this isn't something that's just entirely from my unverified personal gnosis. This is an idea that is out there in other cultures, in other myths, and it is a concept that I have used this throughout my life, and it works. There are themes, but these themes aren't just themes of your overall life. Yeah, that's the thing about shows, is they have episodes, they have seasons, and each season there are individual plot lines within that. And what the trick is to learn to observe what these plot lines are. The same as you do in a movie. Yeah, you'll be watching a season of a TV show and be like, okay, well, that's where the author is going. The same is true of life. We are essentially actors in a play, just as Shakespeare would have us believe. The part he didn't mention is that the audience can affect the story. That's just like ratings. Yeah, the certain things will happen because that's the things they're going to get ratings. That's the thing that's going to cause more observers to observe your plotline, your story. And there actually is some truth to that. The more interesting you can get your life to be, the more interesting it will become. In fact, in my closing of each episode, that is why I say, bright blessings and an interesting fate. Why I wish you an interesting fate is because that is what will grow your power. Yeah? The more interesting our story is, the more drawn observers are to it, the more observers there are observing our reality, the more powerful it becomes, the more condensed into the final product, our portion of reality becomes. But like I said, remember, we all make it there. And if there's any, I suppose, moral repercussions to this idea, it's in that nothing is truly secret. There is, in the end, in the ultimate end, there is no secrecy. Because we all make it there to that final moment where we can observe anything we choose. We will all know anything that we want to know about anything once we've reached, while we are in that moment, which we are now. Like I said, this is outside of time. There's no... Well, there is a plot line that gets us each there. We all have an origin story to our portion of the audience, of becoming part of the audience. With a T, by the way. You'll see me writing about this in the guild in the future. And yes, I have a lot of typos when I write in the guild. But when you see me say audience, A-U-D-I-A-N-T-S, I am speaking of that audience who will hear our story. Okay, so I will be speaking more on this in the future. I'm still, I've been aware of this idea for some time, but achieving that moment where I came down the bridge is helped. I have a lot of new memories there that I'm trying to well, now I forgot the word for that too. Trying to integrate and understand, trying to fully grok, if you'll dig that word with me for a moment, you're familiar with it. Anyways, trying to drink in those ideas and truly absorb them into my full understanding. So we'll probably come back to this idea a bit over time. But for now, that will be it. Don't forget to join us in future episodes. Once again, Sunday at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, I will be going live. I will be trying to do that every week. But for now, bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tao.